All right, folks, welcome back to Have You Read It? Today, we're tackling a book that's all about guts, grit, and standing tall when the world wants you to shrink. Ryan Holiday's Courage is Calling. Now, right off the bat, Holiday emphasizes that courage isn't some rare, precious gem. It's renewable. It's inside all of us, waiting to be tapped. But here's the rub: fear. Fear is the enemy, and this book is your battle plan. The book presents courage as the first of the 4 cardinal virtues: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom, and are key to a life of honor, glory, and excellence. The 4 virtues guide us, show us where we are, and show us what is true. Virtue is something we do, something we choose, and is a daily challenge we face constantly and repeatedly. Holiday kicks things off by painting a picture of Florence Nightingale, not as the legendary lady with the lamp, but as a young woman wrestling with a call to service, a calling that clashed big time with the expectations of her wealthy Victorian family. Nightingale was a brave girl and received this call at age 16 to commit to something different than the life of her rich family, something different than the roles available to women in her time. He talks about how she spent years ignoring it, paralyzed by the fear of what others would think and of disappointing her parents. It's a universal struggle, that tension between what we know we should do and what's safe and comfortable. The initial call to adventure is followed by the refusal of the call because it's too hard, too scary, and that's what Nightingale faced. For years, her family used tactics to keep her at home, keep her within bounds. She was afraid of being unusual and of guilt trips, but the call didn't go away. After 16 years, she broke free and had to expect no sympathy or help from her family. There was a brief moment where Nightingale was not afraid, and she needed to seize that power inside herself again. What we are to do in this life comes from somewhere beyond us, and is bigger than us. We are each called to be something, and we must choose to accept this. Holiday emphasizes the importance of not being afraid, distinguishing between a temporary scare and a state of fear that paralyzes. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that fear was a choice, and the real enemy because it would destroy the remaining banks, turn people against one another, and prevent cooperative solutions. It is normal to be scared, but allowing that to stop you is a disgrace. In times of complicated problems, fear is a liability. We must not be afraid and should not look down, but forward. The next key point is that we defeat fear with logic. Citing Pericles, the author illustrates how fear is often rooted in false impressions. We need to logically break down these impressions and understand the root of fear. False evidence appearing real is what the acronym FEAR stands for. What we need to do is explore our impressions, break them down logically, and understand them. The book encourages us to investigate our fears, to break them down into concrete terms. What's the worst that can happen? And can you handle it? This process alone often defangs the fear. He argues that at the root of most fear is what other people will think of us. There has never been a person who did something that mattered without angering people, and there has never been a change that was not met with doubts. Because people compartmentalize, it is difficult for them to understand what their salary depends on them not understanding. We must remember Cicero's words: "Let other people worry over what they will say about you, because they will say it in any case." To downsize the number of enemies, the author shares Grant's experience with the wolves. What seemed like 20 wolves was only 2. The lesson in such situations was this: there are always more of them before they are counted. According to Tim Ferriss, fear setting defines and articulates the nightmares, anxieties, and doubts that hold us back. Seneca wrote about premeditatio malorum, the deliberate meditation on the evils that we might encounter, but in the form of familiarity, not fear. We are too worried about tempting fate or manifesting bad energy to practice diligent leadership. We must foresee the worst to perform the best, because when fear is defined, it can be defeated. Vague fear is enough to deter us, but the more it is explored, the less power it has over us. Another key theme is facing difficulties. Seneca wrote about Mucius, who was tested by fire, and Fabricius, who was tested by poverty, to illustrate how we shouldn't worry about whether things will be hard, but focus on the fact that these things will help us. Our bruises and scars become armor, and our struggles become experience. Malcolm X said that every defeat contains its own seed lesson on how to improve your performance the next time. Regarding focus, the great Athenian statesman Demosthenes woke up to find he was about to be attacked by both sea and land, and got busy trying to defend himself from the attack. The sooner danger is faced, the better. We should not fill our mind with the bad things that might still happen, but stay focused on the present situation and ask yourself why it's so unbearable and can't be survived. Happy are those who lose imagination, and we should stick with our first impressions. We should try not to fault people, because we can never truly appreciate their experience. Also, we are not privy to the full extent of the struggle and the burden under which others have broken. As Epictetus said, until we know someone's reasons, we don't even know that they acted wrongly. The best we can try to do is learn from our peers, past and present, and apply their lessons to our own life. According to Xenophon, the Greeks knew that with the help of the gods, the brave find safety even from the worst difficulties. Fear determines what is or isn't possible, and it's best to choose how you respond. We can go through life choosing between effective truths, that we have the ability to change our situation, or that we are at the mercy of the situations in which we find ourselves. Xenophon said they could choose between two attitudes, one that said, "What is going to happen to me?" and the other that said, "What action am I going to take?" If we don't believe in anything, it becomes very hard to find anything worth believing in. Courage is honest commitment to noble ideals. It's apathy, disenchantment, and despair. We must insist there is a point to all this. A point to our lives, a point to our decisions, a point to who we are. The most powerful sometimes find it easier to go along to get along, but it is preferable to stand tall in a mud puddle than lick boots in the parlor. There is no need to ask what's in it for me, and we should be strong enough to ask but what if everyone acted this way? Roosevelt's decision to invite Booker T. Washington to the White House was spurred by the fact that he felt a moment's qualm on inviting him because of his color, made Roosevelt ashamed of himself, and made me hasten to send the invitation. The rule to follow is that our fears point us in the direction of the right thing to do. Fear alerts us to danger, but also opportunity, and if something tells us that you're not allowed, we should do it anyway. People would rather be complicit in a crime than speak up. They'd rather follow a silly trend than dare question it, and they'd rather go along with something that will tarnish their legacy than raise their voice even slightly and risk standing alone for 10 minutes. Serpico was the odd man out and found it easier to take bribes than be clean, but to stand up would be to stand out. We should not let the opinion of cowards influence what we think or do. It's essential to remember that all growth is a leap in the dark. Rush reminds us of the pensive and awful silence which pervaded the House when they signed the Declaration of Independence, and it was believed by many at that time to be their own death warrants. We must be willing to throw ourselves in with no stairs and no guarantee. Acheson observed that at the top there are no easy choices. All are between evils, the consequences of which are hard to judge. We are paralyzed with fear, and by that hatred of making mistakes. Instead of making a decision, we're making ourselves miserable. And if we choose not to decide, we still have made a choice, which is to vote for the status quo and to let them decide. Theodore Roosevelt reminds us that never yet was worthy adventure worthily carried through by the man who put his personal safety first. Everywhere I go in the South, the Negro is forced to choose between his hide and his soul. Mostly he chooses his hide. I'm going to tell him that his hide is not worth it. As the song goes, even if you choose not to decide, even if you put things off, you still have made a choice. You are voting for the status quo. You are voting to let them decide. You are voting to give up your own agency. When she was offered the chance to be evaluated to work for the chemical plant, Margaret Thatcher saw the evaluation, said, "This young woman has much too strong a personality to work here." She showed it to an advisor, who asked, "Are you going to let that change you?" "If you get the call to work," the artist Austin Kleon says, "say yes. Worry about the details later." Just as the artist must create, that was what she knew. You will do your part. Helvidius fearlessly looked Vespasian in the eye and said, "And I will do mine. It is your part to kill, it is mine to die, but not in fear, yours to banish me, mine to depart without sorrow." On one occasion, as James Mattis reminded his troops of the same thing, "Never think that you are impotent. Choose how you respond. You get on the stage, whether you want to or not, so you better learn your lines. You put on the tights, you push through the stage fright, you enter the witness stand, you deliver the hard news to the assembled employees." Now we move into part 2, where we are called to bravery over the elements, over the odds, over our limitations, but only when there is a real chance of success, and we do it rarely, when we have no other choice. We decide to testify, decide to go all in on the new venture. We take the creative risk and decide to answer the reporter's email. You must learn to do the thing you think you cannot do, and learn that life happens in public, so get used to it and choose the tradition you will follow. We must not be afraid to ask, because you won't get what you're afraid to admit you need. As Marcus Aurelius said, don't be ashamed to need help, because, like a soldier storming a wall, you have a mission to accomplish, and if you've been wounded and you need a comrade to pull you up, so what? Fear, before you're actually in the battle, is a normal emotional reaction. It's the last step of preparation, the not knowing. This is where you'll prove you're a good soldier. That first fight, that fight with yourself, will have gone. Then you will be ready to fight the enemy. But then comes part 3, where we are called to heroism, perhaps for only just a single magnificent moment, when we are called to do something for someone other than ourselves. De Gaulle symbolizes that France, which did not despair and did not give in. De Gaulle was the intervention of human will in the chain of events, has something irrevocable about it. Responsibility presses down with such weight that few men are capable of bearing it alone. 95% of cowards are capable of the vilest things at the mildest threat, and we should never lose an opportunity of urging a practical beginning, however small, for it is wonderful how often in such matters the mustard seed germinates and roots itself. As Willink said, to get over the fear, you go, because it's good to be difficult. Landmesser wasn't thinking about history when he refused to give the mandated Nazi salute. It's the very fact that Roosevelt felt a moment's qualm on inviting Washington because of his color made Roosevelt ashamed of himself and made him hasten to send the invitation. It's the things you cannot do, because it is almost always the thing you should do. It's the courage to be different, is the courage to think different, and to see what others don't see. Atchison said that, at the top, there are no easy choices. All are between evils, the consequences of which are hard to judge, because things look black, and a decision will have to be made, and I am going to make it. It was the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life is the source from which self-respect springs. A leader doesn't ask that you follow them, rather what they show you. A leader wants to know what category to put you in, so they send difficult situations your way. Are you someone we can count on, and do you have what it takes? Then it's time to take it to the finish line and go. Because as the song goes, life is always touch and go. Remember that there was a time when you were fearless. You must not be afraid to ask for help, and when we rise above fear, we must seize our destiny. Shalamov discovered that the world should be divided not into good and bad people, but into cowards and non-cowards. In addition, when you sign your name, you put your ass on the line, and all growth is a leap in the dark, and it's better to have a bias for action. Thiel wrote that courage is in shorter supply than genius, and you need to do it so that you can have the benefit of all the power and force you've stored up over a lifetime, like John Creasy, who says, "You can be forgiven your sins, you can be forgiven your transgressions, but I don't want anything to do with you." That's just another element of being heroic, if you're going to take it on for somebody else. Remember, you come from sturdy peasant stock, and you choose whose tradition you are going to follow. Never let them intimidate you, and be not afraid of greatness. Don't be afraid to ask, because you can't be afraid to ask. You're looking for a hand, not a handout, so be selfish about your need to know. Then it's time to do the right thing and follow your own set of rules. Also, remember that the cause makes all. It's not just be brave because I told you to be brave. The bravery has to be connected to an urgent sense of the moral cause at stake. If you don't take a stand, you're rolled over and you can't put your safety first. Just be ready to say, now is the time to step up. Because at some point, all your dreams end. Not only must you stand up, but you gotta stay standing and take the punches. You might not have anything else, but they can't have that. It also might mean, I am with you, as long as you're going up. So the time might come to just cut, walk, or quit, because there was never a good war or a bad peace. And with that, we wrap up our exploration of Courage is Calling. The big takeaway here is that courage isn't a trait reserved for superheroes. It's a muscle we can all build starting today. Easy to remember heuristics to remember are, don't be afraid. Break down fear with logic. What's the worst that can happen? It's okay to be difficult. Be yourself. Start small. Go big. Answer the call, always. Protect others, not yourself. If not you, then who? Thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book dive.